Dunley, and on behalf of the Eco Action Committee of the Green Party of the United States, I want to, along with Dawn Marie Cronin, who is the other co-chair, and we want to invite you to this forum that the Eco Action Committee is doing. We're going to be trying to do this on a regular basis to explore various issues that the Eco Action Committee and the Green Party will be working on in the coming year. The Eco Action Committee is going to be working to educate the public about the green agenda on climate and other environmental issues, and also helping the local and state Green Party candidate run on these issues. And we'll also be working with other Green parties around the planet to impact on the COP26 forum on climate that's coming in Glasgow next fall. I'm going to share the screen. Let me get in. Obviously, this is the name of the particular forum for today. This briefly, runs down the agenda. I'm going to give about a 10-minute introduction to Eco Action and what we're doing around the climate president, and particularly Build Back Fossil Free, which is a national campaign. This is a week of action. Then we're going to turn it over to our friends from Florida, LeBeau Padeneau and Robin Denise Harris, going to be talking about some of their eco-socialist campaigns, particularly some of their work around supporting indigenous rights. And we'll hear a recorded message from Betty Asiolo of the Miccosukee tribe. Howie Hawkins, the original author in the United States of the Eco-Socialist Green New Deal back in 2010. We'll be giving a presentation on that. We'll set aside a few minutes for questions and answers. And then we'll turn it over to David Cobb, former Green Party presidential candidate. And he'll be talking about some of the work that he's doing in Humboldt, California, about trying to deal with the climate crisis. And we'll end up with Dawn Marie Cronin talking about future steps for Eco Action. And then Tony and Dingay is going to be talking about some of our ideas around Earth Day action. It's very clear that climate change, threatens humanity. It's a key focus for the Green Party. As I mentioned earlier, we began pushing the Eco-Socialist Green New Deal with Howie Hawkins and actually about 50, 60 other Green Party candidates back in 2010. It combined a very fast 10-year timeline to get to 100% renewable energy and zero emissions, combined with a strong economic Bill of Rights, living wage job guarantee, universal health care, single payer health care, housing and education. Howie will talk a lot more about that. Obviously, the Democrats, starting with AOC, have sort of adopted the Green New Deal banner, but their proposals tend to be quite a bit weaker than what Howie and the Green Party have been talking about. Climate remains the biggest threat to humanity on the planet. The International Panel on Climate Change warned that we have a decade for the world's government to take unprecedented action to try to combat climate so that we can avoid climate collapse. The reality is the IPCC is a pretty conservative body. It's dominated by the fossil fuel nations that have to approve any of their findings. And as a result has been, they tend to always been wrong. They underestimate the speed and severity of climate change. And we need to move as quickly as possible to zero emissions, not take the 2050 timeline that the Democrats talk about. As we saw after Obama's election in 2008, no matter how much control the Democrats have in Congress, it's never enough. Their solution is we always need more before we can deliver on our campaign promise. And we're at that situation right now where the House and the Senate have very narrowed majorities. The Democrats will work to appease their blue dog Democrats like Senator Manchin of West Virginia, coal country. And so the reality is we're not going to see a lot of really bold climate action in Congress over the next 4 years. We still got to continue to push. And what the Democrat leadership like Biden and who's that other guy? Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader from New York, who I met with recently. They've come around to the concept that investing in renewable energy is, a way to create jobs. And so we're going to see $1 or $2 trillion economic stimulus proposed to invest in green infrastructure to create jobs, but they're going to go a lot slower in terms of trying to actually stop fossil fuels. And so that's what comes to the climatepresident.org, which is something that the Eco Action Committee endorsed. Given that Congress still is pretty gridlocked, there's a lot of power that the president has to take executive action on climate. He's done some of that. We want him to do a lot more. And about 600 groups came together to put out a pretty, extensive outline of several hundred steps that he could take under executive action. And we're hoping to push the president to do more of it. Want him to declare a national climate emergency. Under the National Emergency Act, there's about 150 different laws that already exist that would kick in. We want to keep the fossil fuels in the ground. We want to shift financial flows from fossil fuels to climate solutions. Very concerned about the concept of trying to move to 100% renewable energy by 2030. Biden did come out with 100% for electricity by 2035, which is a step up, but not exactly where we need to go to. One thing the Democrats are talking about is both the need for a just transition to help existing communities and workers, and the idea about advancing climate justice. And particularly one good thing that the president talked about was 40% of new climate funds should benefit those most negatively impacted by climate change. It's one of the reasons we asked our friends from Florida to talk, because so much of this particularly goes on indigenous land. And, we need to halt fossil fuels. We don't need to just talk about it. We need to make polluters pay, stop giving massive subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. That includes a robust carbon tax. And it's good that the United States rejoined the Paris Agreement, but let's remember that in Paris, it was the United States under Obama and Biden and Kerry, which really fought on behalf of the industrial nations and fought against the developing world. So it's good that they have moved forward with rejoining it, but that's not the solution. The Build Back Fossil Free campaign, which is taking place this week, that's why we're doing our event this week, is very similar to the climate president. It's the same organizations, but this is more coordinated by the Indigenous Environmental Network. There's more of a focus on some of the frontline communities and on some of the indigenous groups that are fighting the pipelines. We want to invest more in Black, Indigenous, Brown, and working class communities. We want to end the era of fossil fuel production. And we want to launch a national climate mobilization. And so what people are hoping to do for the Build Back Fossil Free campaign, take out your cell phones, your smartphones, your computers right now, and send a tweet to @Joe Biden, @POTUS. We want him to be a climate president. We want him to hashtag Build Back Fossil Free, do an Eco-Socialist Green New Deal. Surprisingly, for some reason, the White House comment line, 202-456-1111, isn't taking any comments at the moment. So you can go into whitehouse.gov/contact and write an email message if you want to. What they had also suggested was go out and stand in front of your congressman's office and stand in front of a fossil fuel infrastructure and hold a sign like President Biden, Build Back Fossil Free, take a tweet, selfie, and, treat it to Biden, treat it to your local congressman. I happen to have a couple of snowmen hang out at my house. They did a demonstration down at the state capitol in Albany to try to get our state legislature to end fossil fuel subsidies. So, feel free to do your own. And just very quickly, Biden has done some executive orders. This sort of summarizes a number of them. But for instance, number 2, he directed the Department of Interior to pause oil and gas drilling leases on federal land, which is a campaign promise. Glad he moved forward at same time. For some reason, the same week he announced this executive order, he actually handed out about 30 permits for new offshore oil drilling. A lot of people do seem to be interested in number 3, that he has a goal to conserve at least 30% of federal funds in ocean by 2030. We can go on, but at this point, I'm going to try to figure out. Let's stop share. And we're going to turn it over to LeBeau and Robin. Let me move this.
All right.
Well, let me get you up here a second. Add spotlight. Oh, I'm trying to find Robin. Well, I'll work on Robin. LeBeau, why don't you start off?
All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting us to speak to the committee. The topic is eco-socialism. I actually got to interview Howie Hawkins the other day and asked about socialism and eco-socialism. That went back to history, and I think that's very important. A lot of the problems, the systems that we have that are over on our planet are carryovers from an earlier age. I'm going to talk about one of those, specifically Florida sugarcane burning. I live in Palm Beach County, which is in southern Florida, the same county that Mar-a-Lago is in. And in the western part of our huge county is basically where a lot of the sugar from the United States comes from. The sugar industry gets $4 billion worth of U.S. subsidies every year, and they engage in a very barbaric practice called sugarcane burning. Sugarcane burning is a way of prepping the sugarcane fields. I've got an image on the screen for you to see what it's like. The sugarcane stalk has in the middle of it the sweet sugary part and a papery part on the outside. At the beginning of the season, they burn that paper off. It is a old way of doing it, and it goes on for about 6 months.
LeBeau, you're breaking up a little bit.
Brown area.
LeBeau, you're breaking up a little bit.
I'm sorry, let me do something about it. Yeah. I will keep talking as I do that. It tends to, they burn the sugar cane in the black and brown areas of an area called Belglade, and it causes horrible health problems like adult onset asthma, childhood asthma, cancer, heart attacks, etc. If you ask the sugar industry why they're doing this in Black communities, they will tell you they're not doing it because of racism. And to some degree, they're telling the truth. It's not that they are current day racists who are doing these things to Black and brown people, but historical racism, because historical settler colonial ideas are what allows these things to continue. Belglade has 2 housing projects, both built in the 60s by the federal government. By law, they were segregated. In the northwest part of the city, you had Osceola. In the northeast part of the city. In the southwest part of the city, you had Okeechobee Park. And Okeechobee Park was segregated for Black people, and Osceola was segregated for white people. In the late 60s, the city was asked to annex both these communities and accepted the white community, did not accept the Black community. What that means is that if you live in Belglade, Florida, in the Black area, you have no representation. There's no city government you can go to speak of these problems. You have to instead go to the county government. The county government is about an hour drive away from Belglade, and they have their meetings on a weekday, Wednesday, for about 6 hours at 9 in the morning, and they take no public comment. So while today,
breaking up again,
the systems of
breaking up again.
I'm sorry, I don't know what I can do about this. That being said, I will tell you to go and check out stoptheburn.org, where you can hear about this horrible environmental racist tragedy that's going on in Florida. It's kind of like a mini Flint going on for 6 months out of every year. It's been going on for a century. So with that, since I'm having audio problems, I'm going to turn it over to Robin so Robin can talk about another land use issue based on settler colonialism and slavery. Over. Robin, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, LeBeau. So yeah, Florida is probably the capital for settler colonialism. And so I'm gonna also try to roll back a little bit. Historically speaking, 1565, Pedro Menendez, uh, he's he's been he's been coined with being the founder of St. Augustine, Florida. He bought a shipload of slaves and other folks into Florida, brought them to a colonized land, and introduced them to forced slavery. So we get the taste then of colonialism at its finest. So these folks were also forced labor, which is very interesting, LeBeau. King Philip also had slaves on this colonized land down in colonized in colonial Florida, and he forced them to work on sugar plantations. So we've had this settler colonialism in our economics that just perpetuated that. And so just to fast forward it, it kind of mirrors with what's going on now. The 1800s, the yellow fever epidemic breaks out, and it's affecting affecting their capitalism. But of course, colonialism is still being perpetuated. And the interesting thing is that these individuals, the slaves, that were forced to work, they got sick from the yellow fever, and they were thrown when they died, they were thrown into cemeteries. And this is key with us. It even talks. It's we were talking about with David earlier, David Cobb earlier, about the disrespect for life in death, or life after death. Or these slaves were thrown into what's now called the Pinehurst Cemetery, but it's more often known as the Forgotten Cemetery or the Slave Cemetery. These individuals were unlaid to rest, so to speak, in these places, and sometimes they were even thrown into these cemeteries, and they weren't even dead yet. So, but they were thrown into these nightmares, and this has happened in St. Augustine, 1601. Even though slaves were here, but some more slaves were born 1600s and continued to work this land. And just to kind of bring this up to date now, our eco actions must embrace narratives of African, indigenous, and poor and working class people to make it be complete. We have to, as a party, we have to shed our white environmentalist look to make this a policy that has teeth and has construction, because it's kind of hypocritical to say Black lives matter unless Black people matter. Black power must matter too. And it matters so it must matter in Black death. And so there's a bill that we're currently working on, State Bill 222, and it's kind of a neoliberal little thing, but it's supposed to create a task force to identify these sacred sites, and most of those sites have been built over more colonial tactics. Businesses are over them. Just all kinds of things. And Florida has burial laws that when this happens, it's supposed to stop, and archaeologists are supposed to come out and things are supposed to take place. Those things aren't happening. So there's State Bill 222, and let's lift up the there in these sacred sites are veterans, slaves, railroad workers, working class people of Florida that are presently in death, still being disrespected under settler colonialism. So that's kind of it for this right now. And so thank you for the opportunity.
Mark, we're about 2 minutes over. Can we still have 2 more minutes, or do we need to go ahead?
If you want to quickly show the video, go right ahead.
Quickly, Lizzie, I'm going to unmute her. She's going to from Duval County, who brought this issue to our attention. It's going to give us a quick background, very quickly, about 15 seconds, and I'll show the video. Lizzie,
Yeah.
you're unmuted.
Greetings. Thank you to our Florida co-chairs for that wonderful overview of some of our efforts here in Florida. The state of Florida, if everybody could mute, maybe we wouldn't have this feedback. Okay, the state of Florida requested to assume responsibility for Florida federal wetlands. By our state, who does not have the funding or the resources to protect these sensitive wetlands from pollution, and to go with the Endangered Species Acts and other laws on the books. So we are echoing their request to support them in the federal government returning their trust responsibility. On the screen, you will have a message. If you could take a screenshot of that, or if you're old school, grab a pencil and take these actions on behalf of our Florida indigenous tribes. And as we listen to Betty Osceola on the front lines, doing a prayer walk all week for defending the sacred, our Florida waters. Go ahead and play, Betty. Thank you. Over.
We're asking, online when we post up, if you can share out what we're doing. And even when people post up their prayers and everything, go ahead and share all that out. Also, we're still asking for those out there. We're still asking people to email in regards to the 404 permitting, because those discussions are really stalled right now, and the tribes really need as much support they can get from the outside world to email EPA at 404assumption-florida@epa.gov. Also, if you use Twitter, I did put up a tweet, and I think I shared that on my own page. The tweet I did, if you can tweet as well, share the tweet that I put out, because I copied somebody else's tweet that they're in support of us, and trying to tag different Congress people, because we want Congress to know that, there's some concerns about the 404 assumption, and also the failure to respect indigenous rights. So, and as we all know, politicians prefer to use Twitter. So if we bombard Twitter and start tagging them, so maybe they'll start looking into this to figure out what the heck is going on. I know myself, I tagged Deborah Holland, I tagged Bernie Sanders, I tagged Alcee Hastings. I'm going to go back on Twitter and tag Rico Wilson and any other congressperson I can think of, to start tagging them. Even Nancy Pelosi, tag her. So, and I've gone on TikTok, and I've asked people on TikTok if they do Twitter as well, to start tweeting about the issue, because we got about almost 2 million people around the world that are asking how they can help. So if you know people who also tweet and in your networks, ask them to do the same thing as well, to keep this going. Because it's unfortunately the only way they're going to do the right thing is if we force them to do the right thing. So I'm going to sign off, let y'all go. If you're walking with us in the morning, or get a good night's rest, make sure you get in a good meal, get in plenty of fluids tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.
The Florida delegation thanks you for your time. You are muted.
Up next, we're going to hear from Howie Hawkins. longtime Green Party candidate for many, many different things here in New York State, helped us 3 times get ballot status in his gubernatorial runs. First candidate in the United States to promote the Green New Deal. Obviously, he was the recent Green Party candidate for president. We're going to give Howie about 12 minutes and then leave some time after that for some questions that people can put in the chat. Mr. Hawkins.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to speak about the Eco-Socialist Green New Deal. And I'm talking about a full-strength Green New Deal, not this diluted, non-binding resolution that AOC and Senator Markey put in, and Pelosi hasn't let them vote on it. And it went, and they voted on it in the Senate, and the Democratic senators didn't vote for it. In fact, 4 of them voted against it with the Republicans. So what we're talking about is getting to 0 to negative emissions and 100% clean energy by 2030, and having an economic bill of rights to make sure everybody's basic economic needs are met. And it emphasizes public planning and enterprise as opposed to the market incentives from the neoliberal Democrats. The Republicans don't even want to deal with this issue that we've been getting since they were talking about cap and trade back in Kyoto. And the Democrats watered that down. So, and then never got it ratified. So we need to do like we did during World War II. In that emergency, the federal government took over a quarter of the manufacturing capacity of this country in order to turn industry on a dime into what they called the arsenal of democracy, to arm the allies to defeat the fascists. We need to do nothing less through the public sector to defeat climate change at this time. This is an emergency at least as great as World War II. Now, there's a budget on my website, howiehawkins.us, and you can look at it. We costed out what it would take over 10 years to do this. And we came out to $41.7 trillion over 10 years. And there are really 2 parts to it. One we call the Green Economy Reconstruction Program. That's $27.5 trillion. That gets us to 0 to negative emissions, 100% clean energy. It happens to create 30.5 million jobs, including 8.5 million in manufacturing. And then the economic needs part, the Economic Bill of Rights, is public provision at 14.2 trillion over 10 years. And that's the rights to a job, an income above poverty, affordable housing, comprehensive health care, free education lifelong at public institutions, and a secure retirement. And yes, this nearly doubles the federal budget. We more than doubled it when we went into World War II. But it's the only way we can do it, because we need the planning and the coordination to transform all productive systems. All they talk about is energy production. That's only 27% of our carbon footprint. We got to transform all productive systems in manufacturing, agriculture, buildings, and transportation. So that means basically rebuilding our whole productive system in this country. And the market-based incentives are too slow, too uncoordinated, and they don't have enforceable goals. Depends on market conditions. It's really not serious. And you know what, the kind of linkage we need to do. We do public transportation, mass transit, high-speed bullet trains. We can integrate that with a massive public housing program we call for and make sure everybody's got homes. But the way we build those communities and link with public transportation, we can create walkable communities that are much more energy and resource efficient. And let me just try to give about 5 features of this thing. I'm gonna leave power production alone. Manufacturing, obviously, we gotta change things like steel production from coke ovens to electric arc furnaces, or cement from Portland cement that uses calcium carbonate. When they heat it up, the carbon goes in the atmosphere. That's 5% of the world's carbon footprint. There are other ways to make cement. And we got to do this through the public sector, because the steel companies aren't going to shut down those coke ovens till they wear out. And then in some cases, that's decades from now. They're not going to change a Portland cement factory just because they're worried about the climate. We got to do this through the public sector. So we need to socialize some of these industries to make these changes. I mentioned the housing. Let me just compare that with what Biden's talking about to show you how unserious they are. He doesn't always get the same figure. Sometimes it's 4 million buildings retrofitted in 4 years. Sometimes it's 5 years. And he's not talking about heat pumps to get them off fossil fuels for heating. Just talking about energy efficiency. Well, there are 120 million buildings in the country. If it's a 4-year program to get 4 million, that will take 120 years to get all the buildings. If it's a 5-year program, 150 years. This is not serious. And you look at the Biden program, that's one of the few numbers he put out. Agriculture, we got to have a total transformation because we got to rebuild soils that sequester carbon. We got to ban absentee-owned corporate funding and put working farmers back on the land. We need parity pricing and supply management so the working farmers have a living income. We got to have a new homestead program because if we go to organic, it's going to take about 1 million more farmers on the land to do that. And then another feature is drawing down carbon. We not only have to stop the emission of carbon, we got to draw it down. If 350 parts per million is the safe level, we're at 413 this year. That's a climate disaster. We got to draw it back down. That means rebuilding soils, afforestation. We need a massive civilian conservation corps. Biden's climate corps is BS. There's no money for it. And what it says in the executive order, we're going to use existing appropriations in interior and agriculture. They're not putting any new money into this thing. They are not serious. And the other thing we got to think about is industrializing the geological carbon cycle. For example, like they did in Iceland, putting carbonated water in basalt rock formations. And after a year, something like 95% of that carbon solidified as carbonate in the rock. And that's in there for geological timescales. That's another way. And because we're so far behind the ball, we may have to do that kind of industrialization of the geological carbon cycle. Last feature I'll mention is just transition. Biden just stopped the permitting of the XL Keystone, which is a shortcut. Keystone's already bringing that tar sands down to Texas. This would increase the scope and scale. But there is no provision for those workers that were working on that pipeline. We're calling for a just transition of up to 5 years, income and benefits until they find comparable work. Because there's no just transition there, everybody from Trump to the AFL-CIO's Trump Cup, there's a backlash mobilizing, and they're enabling the right and the corporations to pit jobs versus the environment. That's why we need a just transition for political reasons, as well as the morality of it. So I think I've gone about 8 minutes. So let me just say a few more things, comparing this serious Green New Deal to the pathetic programs we're getting from the Biden administration. The most he's pledged, and he keeps changing his number, is $2 trillion over 4 years. Compare that to 41 point, whatever it was, 2.7 trillion over 10 years. And in his executive order, very explicit about how they're going to do this. There's public money, but it's going to mainly be, and this is a quote, market-based mechanisms to catalyze private sector investment. Corporate welfare. They're paying off their donors. And then he's got terrible policies. He still wants to frack the hell out of the country for oil and gas. And then he wants to cover it up with carbon capture and sequestration. He wants to keep the nuclear power plants open, which are so embrittled that they could explode because the radiation embrittles the metals. And like the containment vessels, they were designed for 40 years. The NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, we call it the Nuclear Rubber Stamp Commission, extended that to 60 years, then 80 years. Now they're looking at 100 years. They're basically setting us up for nuclear disasters. And they're uneconomical. They subsidize, under Obama Biden, nuclear power plants in South Carolina and Georgia. The South Carolina plants, because of cost overruns and construction delays, they gave up on them. They're still building 2 in Georgia, but that's because Brian Kemp stole the election from Stacey Abrams, and they're pouring money because Brian Kemp is a creature of Georgia Power and the Southern Company. So it's an uneconomical waste of money. And then you got Tom Vilsack for Secretary of Agriculture, corporate agriculture, destroying the soils, running farmers off the land. We need a movement from farmers like they got in India right now. Farmers are committing suicide now like they did in India. They're losing farms fast. It's all becoming Wall Street-owned corporate absentee agriculture. And then what they want to do is biofuels, liquid biofuels from industrial agriculture, basically corn ethanol. Disaster environmentally and climate-wise. Biogas from anaerobic digesters from the factory animal farms. And then the carbon markets I mentioned. So I got a minute left. What can we do? We can stop new fossil fuel infrastructure. Dakota Access Pipeline, Enbridge Line 3, and extending this temporary moratorium that Biden imposed on the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and make it a permanent ban. And wherever you are, there are pipelines, gas-fired power plants, we got to fight those things. Because you build that infrastructure and the investors want to get money out of those for decades. And then where I think we can really make a difference is local action, public power. So we have the power to design energy efficient, renewable energy systems, public microgrids, public financing of heat pumps and energy retrofits and solar panels. So the customers, the public pays up front the capital cost, and then the customer pays back that cost over time, because once you put in a heat pump, for example, you're going to be paying less than you are for gas. That difference can be used to pay off the loan from the public. Net metering. And then we need municipal Green New Deals, which both identify what we can do with existing resources in our communities and also what we demand from the state and federal governments in terms of infrastructure and investment. And then I'm still within 12 minutes. Last point is there is going to be some money thrown out here in the form of grants. And we need to be looking at that in our local communities and making sure it's spent toward what we would do with a Green New Deal in our communities. So thank you for listening. And I guess it's time for question and answers.
Yeah, Howie, there's a question in the chat. Free education for K-12 and college too. Please explain further how this would be manageable and grant access to equal education, especially with the difference in funding for schools, and educators need to be paid better.
Well, the only thing that costs more than a good education is no education or a poor education. This is an investment that pays off. We saw that with the GI Bill. So a lot of countries around the world provide childcare and pre-K education publicly for free, or at least at affordable levels. And they provide tuition-free college, trade school, and other post-secondary education. So this is a wealthy country. We can afford to do it. It's a matter of priorities. And the inequities in funding, I mean, I would propose we deal with that by getting education funding off the property tax, because property is unequally distributed, and using progressive taxation at the federal level and just redistribute that on a per capita basis, and then have some formulas for communities in high need to get a little extra.
How is education, oh, here's a question. Any ideas on how to get focused on the waste, greenhouse gases, pandemics from the cruel animal slaughter farming and shift to plant-based lifestyle as recommended by the Project Drawdown?
Well, I think we got to get laws banning concentrated animal feed operations, CAFOs. We got to have humane animal treatment laws that, regulate how animals are treated in agriculture, and that will undermine the factory farms. And I think by education, we can shift people toward a more plant-based diet. But, you know, a lot of farmers will argue you need those animals on the farm to have a real agroecology and, you know, recycle nutrients from what they eat and so forth. So I don't think we should ban meat eating, but I think by education, we can get people to get a healthier, more plant-based diet.
Okay. I think we're about out of time, Howie. If people want to find out more about some of your ideas, how best can they do that?
Well, I would say, you know, go to the howiehawkins.us and look at that Eco-Socialist Green New Deal budget, because we really tried to cost out and figure out how many jobs we created by these various investments. I did that with John Wren, who was he's a political economist. He was a research assistant for Seymour Millman, who back for you older folks may remember was like the foremost authority in this country on how to convert from military to civilian production, why we need to keep our manufacturing base instead of having it shipped overseas, and why we need worker co-ops instead of capitalist enterprises. So John really did a lot of the research on that. And if you have questions, you know, contact me through the website and I'll try to answer them.
And I know that's true. So thank you very much, Howie. And we want to switch to David Cobb, one of the, also a prior Green Party candidate for president. And David will describe an experiment underway in Humboldt County, California, where he lives, to bring together an alliance of organized labor, environmentalists, progressive Democrats, Greens, and socialists to run a citizens initiative for a municipal bond to fund renewable energy to address the climate crisis. And David, you got to unmute yourself.
Thank you for that. And thank you to the Green Eco Action Committee, to the Green Party of Florida, to Howie Hawkins for this opportunity. I do want to say, and I want to give a hat tip to Michael O'Neill because I'm totally stealing his line and I know he's on this call. But as Greens, I think that we really need to have a narrative that is quick and easy. And it goes like this. There are really three Green New Deals. First, there's the real Green New Deal that was brought to you by the Green Party. And as Mark acknowledged, Howie Hawkins was the architect of that back in 2010. Jill Stein ran on it in 2012 and 2016. The Green New Deal actually calls to restructure society, both economically, dismantle the military-industrial complex, and address energy production, right? Then there is the second Green New Deal, which does attempt to address fossil fuel use and energy production. And then the third one is the corporate Democrats' Green New Deal, which is neither green nor new nor a deal. And what we have to do is be willing to confront and say with candor that the only way that we can actually transition is to do so from an eco-socialist perspective. It must transition our economy and energy production and the military-industrial complex. But you can't do everything at once. So as Mark pointed out, I'm going to actually talk about specifically what we're trying to do at the local level, because at the local level where we live, work, play, and pray, this is where we actually have the most power. So in Humboldt County, California, we recently had an opportunity. Oh my gosh, wind power is coming to Humboldt. Oh, but wait, Terrigen, big multinational corporation, was going to come in, site it on the sacred territory of the Wiyot people, basically demanding that once again, they be a sacrifice zone. So it actually did, to be very candid, it pitted a lot of environmentalists against one another. I am proud to say that the Green Party and Cooperation Humboldt stood with the Wiyot people. We were clear and unambiguous. We rejected that project. It was a hard-fought battle, but it was in fact rejected. What it did, however, was not only expose some fissures, but it also provided some opportunity. And so using relationship-based organizing, we were able, and we are in the process of bringing organized labor, and I mean the Central Labor Council, I mean the Business Trades Council, right? I mean traditional organized labor, which we all know is usually tied directly to the Democratic Party at the hip, right? We're bringing them to the table, and we're bringing the North Coast Environmental Center. We're bringing the whole plethora of environmental organizations that have been participatory in the fight. And we are doing a process, slow and meticulous, to build consensus around what renewables we want here, and to do it through a ballot initiative that would simultaneously fund it so that it becomes locally owned municipal power coming off of getting us off of the corporate grid. The last thing that I want to say, in addition to that, parallel to that, we are also working through Cooperation Humboldt and others in order to build resilient hubs where we are creating very small microgrids that are an attempt to begin to transition completely out of the industrial electrical energy production and distribution model. So, there's not enough time to go into all of the detail. I did, again, want to just conclude with this. The reality is, and I appreciated that sort of cough, right? Progressive Democrats. And we have to actually, whenever anybody in elected office does the right thing, we should cheer it. And when they do the wrong thing, we should jeer it. Now, we all know that 99 times out of 100, we're jeering both Republicans and Democrats. But when they do the right thing, we have to give them an acknowledgement for it. And we have to, that's what actual relationship building for power means. Because what I am trying to do is to engage in non-reformist reforms. Fight for the reforms that will make people's lives better and in a material, concrete way. And this is the important thing, does not cede to the logic of capitalism that actually is designed to say we either win and we keep going, or we lose, proving that bourgeois democracy does not work. So if you engage in the right kind of organizing and run the right kind of campaigns, honestly, you're building power either way and you can't lose. Thanks again to the Eco Action Committee for this opportunity. Peace.
Thank you, David. Up next, and we're trying to make this work, is Dawn Marie, who is our, let's see if this will work now, who is a co-chair of the Eco Action Committee. And we're going to try to see if we can spotlight her. It's not allowing me to do that, but Dawn, maybe because your video is not turned on. So Dawn, what would you like to say?
Well, there's a lot of things that we can do in our local communities. We need to reach out and connect with those around us who are sharing the same interests. There are so many things that we can do coming up here in the next few months that can help with Eco Action. We are going to turn the over to Tony Ndege. He's got some information about May Day, Earth Day to May Day, which is going to be the next thing that we're highlighting with Eco Action.
How's it going? Thank you, Dawn. My name is Tony Ndege. I'm one of the 7 national co-chairs of the Green Party. I'm happy to be here with Dawn Marie and with Mark. Thank you so much for inviting me to this awesome event. As everyone knows, like last year was a very challenging, extremely challenging year. For activists, it was not only extremely difficult, but it was also a year that was very powerful and also very hopeful, not only because of the biggest protest wave we've had in decades, but we also saw some significant victories like the cancellation in my state and other states in the Southeast of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline that ran through North Carolina. And not surprisingly, Robeson County, which is not only one of the poorest counties in North Carolina, but is not coincidentally the largest indigenous region. The Lumbee Indian indigenous population in North Carolina is one of the largest indigenous populations. In fact, North Carolina has the largest indigenous population in the Southeast. So that there's a lot that happened that was wonderful, and a lot that happened that was very challenging. But in Eco Action, which I'm a liaison to in the steering committee, we resolved that we wanted to rebound this year and to have a week of action and have other days of or weeks of action. Like it, our goal is to have at least 3. And so that's something we haven't done in a very long time in a coordinated fashion as a party. So what I thought about and several other folks thought about was, how about Earth Day? And then maybe, well, it's 8 days, just one more day than a week between Earth Day and May Day. Now, for some of you who might remember, we actually had, there was the Green Party took part in a global climate convergence that took place between Earth Day and May Day. This wouldn't necessarily be on that level. We did, you know, because of the pandemic, and many other reasons, we can't quite coordinate on that level, but we can reach as many people or even more if we have coordinated actions and also educational events in many places. So we can engage in direct actions in a safe way. We don't necessarily have to have 500 people, 500,000 people for an action. And in ways that we could actually reach more people if you have like a larger city, if you have a state with several different large cities, or even in smaller areas, you can have people doing smaller actions, but spread out the outreach of those actions. We can also engage in educational events. Zoom is now pretty much ubiquitous. However, there are other similar formats that people can also engage in. So just really quickly, and I don't want to take too much time, but we can this doesn't require a lot of people. We could spread out across a large city. We could actually do something that we tried during the H2O campaign in North Carolina. We went, instead of door knocking, we actually went door hanging. So you could actually have some information about the Green Party. And what this should be about is about building our party, building independent power, and letting the public know that we are not going to compromise on the issues that matter. We are not going to compromise on the issues that are life and death to the planet and also to the people. So one thing we could do is to do door hanging. We can actually hit thousands of doors, and, you know, maybe take a week to do that. And also one of the themes that we could engage in is giving power to the people. Jill Stein and John McGraw talked about this. We've explored this theme before, of course, Black Panther Party as well. And so really what that could be, that could actually work into both days, Earth Day and May Day. Any of the various disastrous consequences of for-profit energy could be related to giving power to the people. So that, you know, you could do actions regarding fracking, nuclear energy, coal ash contamination. In my state, Duke Energy is the largest utility in the country, based in Charlotte, North Carolina. So we here in North Carolina, Green Party are calling for public control of energy. That includes utility energy and all of our energy resources. So that certainly fits under the theme of power to the people. May Day is also about giving power to the people, right, traditionally. So we could feature panels of workers who are organizing to fight back against dangerous and oppressive working conditions, or we could, you know, have events with workers who are rising from the devastation of all these restaurants and small businesses. And maybe we could talk about some of the things that we are trying to implementing, some of the things that we're hoping to build, like worker-owned businesses, because this is going to be a lot of devastation of small businesses, restaurants, you name it. And this is going to continue on. This is not just a short-term situation. This is going to be long-term effects of this pandemic and this global economic crisis. So what I encourage you all to do is to join the Eco Action Committee, and I'm going to give you a way to contact us. So we're going to be calling for the Green Party. We're in the early stages of this planning to have a week of action from Earth Day to May Day, 8 days. Also to join the Eco Action Committee. And the way that you would do that is if you're a registered Green, preferably active in your state party. If you do have an active state party, you have to be appointed to the Eco Action Committee. However, you might be able to be appointed as an observer as long as you're either registered Green or committed Green. In some states, you can't register as a Green. We know that. You can email earthday@gp.org, or you could text Earth Day, no spaces, to 833-664-0565. 833, well, this is backwards. So it's not going to work when I hold it up.
It does work.
But oh, it does work. Okay, great. Oh, it does work. Okay. There you go. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Mark and Dawn Marie, and to the audience here. Please let me know if you have any questions whatsoever. I did put the information in the chat. Thank you.
So Dawn, do you have additional information you want to mention?
Nothing more than I can think of other than just a little bit of food for thought. If everyone replaced one meal with a non-animal protein meal per day, just think about how much change that would make in the world. Just one salad, one vegetarian-based meal. That would really help with some of the changes that we're trying to enact here. I'll send it back on over to you, Mark.
Okay. Well, so thank you very much for everybody joining us. This is the first of our events that we're going to try to do. I'm going to, Tony gave you an email to contact. I want to also give you an additional email. As I said, we hope this is going to be the first of many such events. So if you have an idea, whether you'd like us to do something about factory farming or about toxic waste, any particular environmental issue, please let us know. We want to also help candidates who run in for, Green Party for local office, state office, help you develop platforms. If your local has developed, materials, if you can send that to us so we can try to distribute it. If you're working on a campaign to stop a fossil fuel, infrastructure project, if you're trying to do something innovative, such as community or worker-owned, renewable energy projects or low income, have environmental justice, please contact us because we want to figure out how we can, provide assistance to you on that. Let's start this from the beginning so I get it correctly. And, so we mentioned so that, what the Democrats are going to do, it's called the Thrive Agenda, THRIVE agenda.org. You can look it up on the website, and they're going to try to put $1 trillion to $2 trillion into this program. There's going to be a lot of corporate greenwashing that we're going to have to fight over, but at the federal level. But there's going to be a lot of money coming down at the local and state level to fund various type of renewable projects in the next 6 to 8 months. And we would like to see some of these projects developed along the lines that the Green Party supports. That supports eco-socialism, cooperatives, environmental justice. So I think it's a good moment for the Greens to sort of raise their voice. And I think a lot of people have been attracted to the Green New Deal, but they're sort of getting confused because the Democrats seem to be running further and further away, from the concept of the Green New Deal. And so I think it's about time we try to take that, particular slogan back and, make the connection to eco-socialism. And also, there are two parts. The first part is very rapid transition to 100% clean energy, zero emissions, which the Democrats don't support. You talk about 2050, but it's also the economic bill of rights. It's the living wage jobs. It's the single payer healthcare, universal healthcare. It's housing. it's education. And they often try to separate it, or they want to call whatever Band-Aid they want to apply on climate, they want to call it the Green New Deal. It's not. We should be writing letters to the editor. We should be having more of these local forums. We should testify, at Congress, at the state legislature. Yes, the politicians won't necessarily listen to us, but we should be trying to raise the issue. And please do join the Eco Action Committee. There's a limit of the number of people per state that are official voting members of Eco Action Committee. But we want a lot of volunteers. We're talking about creating task force around the Green New Deal, around climate change, around education. We need your brain power. And so please join. And I want to thank all our speakers, Howie and Tony and Robin, and LeBeau, and somebody I'm missing, Dawn, and we'll be doing more of these. This will be posted to our Facebook page, I think the Green Party United States Facebook page, where we've been live streaming it, so that you can share that in the future. And please do contact us to get involved. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.